North Dakota. This is a Scribe's Journey with your host, Richard Polinelli.
We are back for another edition of In the Superversive Spotlight. And yes, I keep trying to say the old podcast name. Probably about the time the dentist decides I can put my teeth back in. We'll see. It's been a fun podcast to do with this, but this week we have someone who was on the show back when it was under a different name. He was in a hotel room somewhere in Canada. I was in Nebraska, and I didn't look like I had just walked out of a bar fight. Things that change in 2 years, what are you going to do? But let us welcome Edward Willett to the podcast. Ed, thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's nice having you on. You are a busy person when it comes to writing. You have been cranking out stuff since you and I last talked. Your latest book is a YA book, and I believe it's called Star Song. And
Yep.
Why don't you go ahead and just let's get started. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, Star Song is very special to me because it grew out of a very early short story I sold to a now defunct Canadian magazine called Jam, which was a teen magazine, and it was called The Minstrel. And it's actually in my short story collection, Paths to the Stars. I think it's the first story in there, a book I put out a couple of years ago. And I almost immediately started trying to turn it into a novel. Well, I did turn it into a novel. This would be back about 1985, I think. So it was one of the very first books, because of course I am not the young 20-something that I appear to be. It was one of my very first novels that I tried to sell professionally. And the other reason it's dear to me is because it came very, very close to selling. Early 90s, Josephus Sherman was the editor at Walker and Company, which was a major mid-sized publisher in the US of young adult fiction. And I had sent it to her and she sent it back and she said she liked it, but I'd left this huge gap in the middle. There's this time skip that I had to fill. So I said, well, all right. And I wrote 9 additional chapters to fill that time skip. And I sent her back the revised manuscript. She got back to me and she said I'd done exactly what she wanted me to do. She was ready to make an offer on it. Mm-hmm. The publisher of Walker and Company died. His son took over, cut their list, and one of the things he cut was all that science fiction crap. I don't know if he used that word, but essentially, we're not publishing science fiction anymore. And the book never found a home after that. It came that close to being published by a New York publisher, would have, who knows, completely changed the course of my career, likely. Didn't happen. And so I've had it there, and I've sent it out a few times. And then finally, I looked at it again recently with the hindsight of now another 30 years of writing, and said, I could do better now. For one thing, it was all in one viewpoint, one teenage boy viewpoint, and I wanted to get in a second viewpoint because the other main character is a teenage girl. I thought, well, why didn't I have her viewpoint? Duh. So I rewrote the book completely, start to finish. Got artwork commissioned for the cover by Dan O'Driscoll, who's an artist in Calgary who's done cover art for me for my books through Bundoran Press before. So I knew his work. He's an Aurora-winning artist. And so the result was, oh, look, here it is. I happen to have it with me right now.
Yeah, there you go.
Star Song comes out through my own little Shadowpaw Press, which I've been putting out quite a few of my stuff and some other people's stuff as well. And that's the art. And it's exactly the thing. I say that it's in Robert A. Heinlein, Andre Norton mode, because there's no question that it's influenced by their teen stories, which I grew up on and loved so much. So now that was about the book itself. What's it about? Well, it's about this kid on a planet where he's been raised by a guardian who's brutally murdered. He doesn't belong on this planet, and it's quite obvious he doesn't. He doesn't look like the people who live there. He has this mysterious musical instrument called a touch lyre, which he just has to touch, and it plays. And it's the only link he has to his long dead parents, whom he didn't know. And over the course of the book, he discovers through that touch lyre that it's more than just a musical instrument, that there are very powerful men who will stop at nothing to get hold of this thing, because it's actually a powerful alien artifact from a long gone race. And he falls in with the family, which is a space-going gypsy-like, not an organization, they're literally a family, families that operate starships and trade. and he falls in with a girl from this family and has to overcome prejudice from her people and travel the galaxy and escape the bad guys and find out what this thing does. And so that's it in a nutshell.
Well, it sounds like for people, and I know older adults who enjoy reading YA, so I'm including everybody. It sounds like a book that people are into that genre are going to enjoy a lot.
I hope so. It's very much a straightforward adventure story. Good characters, I think, and the reviewers that have read it. I had a great review from a few people now great reviews from a few people now who have read it and seem to really, really enjoy it. And one reviewer said, it's just a fast-paced, a tall tale on a fast ship, I think is the way he described it, which makes it sound like a seafaring story, but I'll take it anyway.
Hey, compliments in any form, right? That's listening to you, and I think you had mentioned this book when you and I talked last time you were on the podcast.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it, bringing it out for a long time, and it went to a couple of other publishers in the interims, trying to still find a traditional. Well, not that I'm not a traditional publisher, I kind of am actually, but not my own publishing company. But I finally pulled the trigger on it, and it's out. Yeah,
well, I think when people think traditional now, I think with the indie publishing that's out there, traditional now is more like the big five, maybe. That's what they're thinking. You go with the big five, and then you've got the small publishers like you've got one. I'm tied in with Tuscany Bay Books, and a lot of us are branching out. Like you said, you've helped other people get published through your house, and we're starting to do the same. So I think that's the distinction now. There's traditional publishing is the big five. There's indie publishing, small houses, small publishing, and then there's just some people. I want to do it myself and leave me alone, and that's cool. I love seeing this. Yeah, it certainly wasn't like that. Again, when I was starting out. There you go. Yeah, it wasn't. I don't know what I would have done had the current climate existed when I was cranking out those first dozen novels that I wrote before I found a home for anything. Sometimes I think, would I have self-published and what would have happened? Or did I actually benefit from not being able to immediately rush my stories into print and continuing to fight to get those limited slots with one of the bigger publishers? I just don't know. Because, over time you grow as a writer, you learn things and you discover different ways to approach a story than what you would have done when you were first starting out. Which is exactly what I found with this book, right? It was like, I thought it was great when I almost got it published back then. But the fact it wasn't published back then, the version I put out now is unquestionably, in my mind, better than what Walker and Company might have published back in the early 90s. Yeah, you never know. I mean, I have a very similar story, and I'll condense this. I had written a screenplay back in 96, 97, something like that. And it went to a producer. The producer, hey, I love this thing. I'm going on vacation. When I get back, I'm going to talk to my business partner. We'll be in touch. So I'm on cloud nine. And the guy is on vacation, drops dead of a heart attack. He never shows it, obviously never shows it to his partner. Nothing ever happens, right? So I put it away. And about 15 years later, I want to write the book for it. And I realized that that's where I started. The screenplay is not the starting point for this character. I have to write the character's backstory first, which became my first published novel. Had that manuscript gone through, the screenplay gone through originally, I don't know that I would be where I'm at today, because my career course would have changed. Would I have written what I've written, once I started later? So it's sometimes not succeeding early is a benefit. And there's no way to know. It's the whole multiverse thing, So there's an alternate universe where that screenplay went through, and I'm driving around in Maseratis all the time. What are you going to do? But another thing is, you took 35 years basically to get that book published. So maybe another lesson is, don't give up on things so much. Keep working at them, and in time it'll happen. Well, and that is actually another thing I really enjoy about having
Shadowpaw Press. And admittedly, I did start it primarily to bring up my own stuff. But as I said, I hope to continue to branch out. I've got a couple of anthologies and so forth. But I believed in those stories, and I still believe in those early stories. So the other one I put out recently is called Assignment Avalon, and I actually put it under as being by Eddie Willett, because Eddie is, everybody who knew me back until about 1988, I was Eddie to. Everybody that knew me after that, I'm Ed or Edward or Mr. Willett, I suppose. I put that one out, very early story. I gave it a quick polish. I published it as Eddie Willett, and I said it's by my younger time traveling self. Came forward in time to take advantage of the modern publishing opportunities that weren't available when he was writing. And it's, you know, it's had a couple of really nice reviews. People enjoy it. It's a straightforward adventure story again. And the funny thing about it is it largely grew out of my very first encounter with the Microsoft Flight Simulator on a Commodore 64 computer, when the flight simulation consisted of a flat green line and a few wire frame things, because it's about this space pilot that ends up on a planet that turns out to be crucial to the war she's been fighting, but all she has to work with on this planet are biplanes. So she's an outer space pilot, but she has to fly biplanes and help prevent the evil empire from taking over. It's certainly a certain Star Wars element in it, I must admit, when I look back at it. But so again, you know, never give up. There's always there's an opportunity. If you believe in the story, why wouldn't you bring it out at some point?
Well, and as you pointed out, especially in today's, I don't know if it's climate's the right word, but the way things are today, today's technology, you can go any way you want to. You can try traditional. If it doesn't work out, but you still believe in the story, it's not really that difficult. It seems like it, and maybe I've done it so much, maybe it seems simpler to me. There is a path for you to get it out there. Now, it's a harder path. You have to do a whole lot more work to get it out there and get it noticed, but it's there. And I'm finding a lot of indie published authors that I'm discovering that I probably wouldn't if we didn't have this setup that we have, where people can get their book out without having to have a publisher. So
I'm of course have a foot in both worlds, because I'm still published by Daw Books, one of the major science fiction fantasy publishers. So I work on that level, and then I've worked with many smaller publishers that aren't quite indie publishers, but were small press or literary publishers, because those still exist as well. Some of them have been around for 30 or 40 years. Although I've killed several of them, they seem to publish me and then go out of business. I think it's my fault. Well, there's 3 publishers that have published me that then promptly went out of business, and I'm just hoping Daw hangs in there.
You have a short story in Planetary Anthology Series Venus that was published by Tuscany Bay Books, and we're still here. So
good.
we're gonna fight that curse as hard as we can. We'll have to call you Edward Willett, publishing house killer now. I mean, it's amazing. You brought up the Commodore 64, and it's kind of got me thinking back in the, I think I had a Commodore 64. I just don't remember what year I got the thing. Back then we could not picture what we've got now. There's no way you could have told me that, this little thing I'm holding in my hand would outdo that Commodore 64 that I thought was this amazing invention that could never be topped again. So, it's incredible that I think you and I started writing about the same time. It sounds like. I don't think either one of us could have seen where we're at today.
I don't miss most of it. I don't miss the putting manuscripts into boxes and mailing it off and waiting 2 years and then following up and lost the manuscript, which happens with Tor books. I don't miss that.
I love that. Do a follow-up. What manuscript? Here we go again.
Nobody wanted simultaneous submissions, so you put those things out there, and the pace at which you were getting responses was just I don't know how we put up with it.
I
we were younger. That helped.
That's true. I think the last time I did it, I boxed up a manuscript, and I was up against a time crunch. So I think I shipped it FedEx, and I think the thing was so heavy, it cost me like $60 to send the thing or something like that. So it's much cheaper to get your manuscript submitted. today. Thanks to the, Word doc files that they'll accept now on emails instead of having to ship it off and hope the post office doesn't lose it, type thing. Okay, now you've got an anthology coming up. I mentioned Venus earlier, but you are getting ready to start editing a anthology of your own. So why don't you let us know?
Quite a bit. Of course, I have my own podcast, which is The World Shapers, where I interview other science fiction and fantasy authors about their creative process. And I've interviewed some of the biggest names in the field on there. And last year, I kickstarted an anthology featuring my first year guests after attending a presentation from somebody who had successfully kickstarted an anthology. And I thought, hey, I know some authors. Why don't I try that? And once I finally built up the courage and the momentum to climb that learning curve to running a Kickstarter, I did it and it succeeded. And the book came out last year. I have it right here. So that was volume 1, Shapers of Worlds.
Okay.
Like Shannon McGuire, Tanya Huff, David Weber, L.D. Modesitt Jr., names like that, John Scalzi, David Brin, Joe Haldeman, Dr. Charles E. Gannon, just a wonderful list of authors. That was 9 original stories and 9 reprints in that one. So I thought, well, that worked. Let's do it again. So second year guests, I contacted to see who would be interested. This time I have 24 authors taking part, 18 original stories and 6 reprints. And it's a similar list of names. Let's see here. We've got, Kelly Armstrong, Marie Brennan, Helen Dale, Candace Jane Dorsey, Lisa Foyle, Susan Forrest, James Alden Gardner, Matthew Hughes, Helly Kennedy, Lisa Kester, Adriel Acraft, Ira Naiman, Garth Nix, Tim Pratt, Edward Savio, Brian Thomas Schmidt, Jeremy Shaw, me, Jeffrey A. Carver, Barb Hambley, Nancy Kress, David D. Levine, S.M. Sterling, and Carrie Vaughn is the list of authors.
Nice.
Yeah, not bad at all. So I'm currently editing that, and I have all the stories except 2, one of which is mine. I haven't written it yet. That guy's such a deadbeat. You can't trust that Willett guy to get anything out of time.
Yeah, I'm running into that with my anthology because people are sending them in, and it dawned on me I haven't even started on mine, so I think I better get going, right?
Yeah, I know what I'm going to write. It's going to be a story that's based on the novel that's coming out next year from Dawes, so it's kind of a taste of that, but I haven't actually started it yet. Anyway, I'm working on that now, and it'll be out in ebook and print from Shadowpaw Press before Christmas, October, I think. Okay. I would say September, but I'm going to say October.
Yeah, give yourself the extra month, because having done the anthology series, it was a madhouse, and we did 11 of those. Yeah, and it ate up 2 years. For 2 years, people were like, are you ever going to write a book again? I'm like, I can't. I don't have time. I've got a 11-book anthology series I'm working on, and it's just eating every second of the day to get it, editing and formatting and cover and the whole shooting match. So yeah, give yourself that extra month. That's my writing advice for the day right there.
Well, I already know because I did it last year.
Yeah, yeah. Don't promise too quick, because something will come up.
The other thing is that the Kickstarter backers get it first, and then it goes on sale to the public almost at the same time. Yeah. But I like to get it out to the backers a couple of weeks before it goes on sale.
Well, that's fair. I mean, yeah. If they hadn't backed it, the book wouldn't be there. So yeah, they should get the first crack at it.
$16,700 Canadian. So what's that? $12?
Oh, okay.
It's about 13,000 US.
that might be a touch pricey for me to put on my bookshelf right now, but not 12's not bad.
Well, that was how much I raised. That's not what I'm charging.
Oh, that's what you raised. Okay. I was like, damn it. That's
well, you only have to sell one.
Yeah, apparently so. Yeah, give me the name of your backer. I want to call him real quick. I've got a couple of books he might be interested in. I'm going to definitely have to get on there as soon as it goes on Amazon, grab that one, because there was several people on there that I enjoy reading. So we'll have to give that a shot as well. Now, the other thing I want to touch on, because I was looking at your list of books on Amazon, you also do nonfiction.
Yeah, that's been my bread and butter. I mean, I've been a full-time freelance writer now since 1993. Mm-hmm. And my very first book was actually using Microsoft Publisher for Windows 95, was my first published book. I did a lot of computer books in the early days, right. But that level of computer book is gone because nobody is such a newbie as people were back then, where you were still explaining to open a file, click File, Open. I mean, that was the level that I was writing stuff at. So that, yeah, and then I got into a lot of children's nonfiction. So I've done a lot of work for educational publishers, biographies, and I did a history of the Iran-Iraq War. I did a biography of the Ayatollah Khomeini, fun guy. But I also did biographies of Tolkien and Orson Scott Card and
yeah, you did a
Jimi
couple.
Hendrix and Janis Joplin.
Yeah. Is there 2 books on Johnny Cash, or are they just two different editions?
2 different editions. The publisher changed, and they brought it out again, and they wanted it shorter, is what happened. So that's a shorter. The second one is a shorter version. Plus the last chapter, which sort of talks about, you know, the latest whatever, whoever you're talking about, was brought up to date with some more stuff. Then, of course, they're all out of date now. But yeah, I've done a ton of that, and then I've also done nonfiction for local history books, like the Association of Professional Engineers and Geoscientists of Saskatchewan. And I've done my big nonfiction book was actually Genetics Demystified for McGraw-Hill, which is hilarious because I had to teach myself genetics to write that book, and I don't remember what's in it. I'd have to read it. What I knew when I was writing. I even did all the illustrations for that thing, and I think back to that. What? But I did it.
Hey, it sold. Apparently you knew the subject well enough to get it to sell. So there you go.
I haven't heard that. There aren't any weird monsters running around because somebody was
no geneticists have called you up and chewed you out for strange stuff in the book or anything. So there you go.
No, I think I'm okay.
How difficult is that? Because I've done it myself.
Well, first of all, I got into writing because I was a reader. And I always loved science, and I've always loved that the science fiction and the interest in science kind of went hand in hand as well. And then I went into journalism. So I started my career as a newspaper reporter and then editor. And then I was communications officer at the Saskatchewan Science Center. So this reading material, and I started writing a science column very early on that ran for 20 some years in newspapers and on radio. So that reading stuff and boiling it down is, I guess it's hard. It doesn't feel hard to me, but I've been practicing it for a very, very long time.
But from, it's 2 different approaches, fiction and nonfiction, when you're writing. And I'm assuming you kind of have you jumped back and forth, or have you kind of abandoned nonfiction for a while? I mean,
I do it as it comes up. I haven't recently, like a lot of the educational publishers I work for, I've somehow fallen away from them. They, publish that. Some of them have sold. I don't think I killed any of them. Some of them have sold to others, and they got new management or whatever, and I've just kind of fallen off of their list. Right. And I'm more interested in fiction. And of course, now that I'm doing my own publishing, as you said, there is a time element. I'm only one person, and
right.
So many people that can work on it once. But I just had a book came out about Saskatchewan political history. I wrote that 5 years ago, and it just now came out. So I do still have nonfiction stuff coming out as well.
Is it a different? I mean, it's a different approach, obviously. But is it difficult for you to change gears when you go from I just got done with a fiction project and now I've got this nonfiction project come up, or do you still have the same approach?
It's just words.
Okay. All right. Well, with fiction, you can kind of, with fiction, you kind of, I want this to do this because I want it to. With nonfiction, especially when you're dealing with historical, you can't really just make stuff up out of whole cloth.
Yeah. The one thing I always find annoying about nonfiction is footnotes.
Me too.
Whereas in fiction, you can just make it up, right?
Right.
And nonfiction, especially depending on the house and what they want and what the publisher wants, there's at least a bibliography, and often there are footnotes, and that's always a pain. But yeah, it's just what it is. It's still telling a story in a way. It's using the same raw materials, which is words, and trying to communicate clearly to what's in your head. You're trying to stick it into somebody else's head using words.
Boil down what's important and then get it across to them so they get it too. 23 minutes flew by.
Zoom.
Yeah, we are on Zoom. So before Zoom decides that I have run out of time, you better tell us where we can find you on online and any social media, and where we can get your books.
Okay. Well, I am on, my main website is edwardwillett.com, 2 T's on Willett. Very important.
And 2 L's.
And 2 L's, 2 L's, 2 T's. edwardwillett.com. My publishing company is shadowpawpress.com. It's named after our cat, our black Siberian cat, Shadowpaw. The podcast is theworldshapers.com. Those are the 3 main websites. There's some others, but those are the main ones. And then on social media, I'm at Willett, again, 2 L's, 2 T's. Shadowpaw Press, at Shadowpaw Press, and The World Shapers at The World Shapers. That's on Twitter. And on Facebook, I'm Edward.Willett, and Shadowpaw Press and The World Shapers. And then Instagram, I'm Edward Willett Author, if you want to watch. And I'm also on YouTube. I should mention YouTube. It doesn't have a handy URL, but if you look for me, you can find me. And I do a daily live stream vlog / live walk around my hometown of Regina on YouTube.
Oh, cool. Well, I definitely check that out.
Where you can find my books? Everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're on Amazon, the whole.
Yeah, everything is wide except for a couple of experiments with just Kindle Select, but generally you can find all my books everywhere. And the ones that come out through Shadowpaw Press are also available directly from shadowpawpress.com in ebook format. You can download them directly from there. I make more money that way too. So
yeah, I have dabbled in that myself, to where I'm realizing, if you can get somebody who knows how to put a website together, and I fortunately have someone who does, you can offer everything and get more money. And
I can't match Amazon's shipping.
No, no, but at least on the ebooks, it's the direct thing. And poor Jeff Bezos will just have to pay for his own extra cup holder on his Blue Origin.
On his next spaceship, yeah.
On his next spaceship, yeah. Edward, thank you so much for coming back on and putting up with me for a second time. Usually people are done with me after the first one, so repeat visitors are always appreciated.
It wasn't too painful.
Well, at least it wasn't an hour show like it was before. Short and sweet. Thanks again for being on. And if you get a chance to read anything Edward writes, I recommend it. And I'm not just saying that because he was in one of our anthologies. He's a great writer. I think no matter what the subject, I'm going to have to get the Johnny Cash books. I'm a Johnny Cash fan. What can I say? That's okay. Sometimes you just need a quick read. That's going to do it, because I think I got 20 seconds left before I get cut. Thanks again. We will see you next time. We're going to have Declan Finn on, and that'll be in about 2 weeks. So for now, we'll see you later. Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
This has been a Scribe's Journey with your host, Richard Palinelli, a Tuscany Bay Productions presentation.